Today I want to talk about Smalltalk in enterprise architectures and enterprise applications, big systems. A little bit of background. I'm working for Novatec, which is an IT company in Germany based near Stuttgart and with offices in Frankfurt and Munich. And I moved to Novatec about 2 months ago, coming from Syncom. And it was an interesting time the last 2 months, being dipped head over into enterprise applications which are built for 30,000 users with 10,000 transactions in an hour, coming from Smalltalk. And I'd like to take you on this discovery trip. The idea is there a home for Smalltalk in such systems? Systems that are completely dominated by JEE. So I had to learn a lot about JEE, knowing it from the past, and had to reverse some of my opinions in this time. So if you're going into enterprise architectures, you see such diagrams. Enterprise architecture, scoping ideas, like TOGAF, the open architecture framework for planning complete enterprise architectures. And they are structuring the system coming from the bottom, from the operating system, from the hardware, over middleware solution, application platform, your individual software development, and finally the business. So don't want to read all this. JEE dominates a good bit of this architecture picture. And so the question is, if we have our Smalltalk balloon, where can it land without being shot down? Let's see. Well, it flies a bit, and it lands somewhere in the area of the individual specialized components, things that might be developed in scripting languages or in Ruby or in Lua, whatever comes into mind, when you are allowed to leave the standard system of JEE, when standards that the platform is completely tested and developed, tested by 10,000 of applications, is no longer important, but being individual, being specialized to your business is important. That's a place where Smalltalk could play. So, to understand why Smalltalk has a difficulty to find a landing place, let's look back 15 years. Turn back the clock by 15 years. What was that for a time? It was a time when Smalltalk was mature already. I would dare to say it didn't change much in its language and its conception since 15 years ago, and Java fought for a reason to exist. I was sitting at Max Planck Institute and looking at the Java specification and laughing hardly. It really was a joke language for us. We looked at it and say, what's this worth for? We were completely wrong. Because if we now say classes in 2010, what do we have in 2010? Java is the biggest player in the enterprise market. It's, except for standard software like SAP or Oracle, it's the only player if you do individual software development. In Smalltalk, that was a pain. I came into a company, Novatec was founded as a Smalltalk company with infant Smalltalk. And they tell me nobody in their market knows Smalltalk. It's completely no name. You couldn't mention it if you say, we want to do development with Java and let's use Smalltalk for that. Nobody knows it. So the question is, what happened? What can we do against it? This is a wake-up call for you. This is definitely a job that cannot be done by one company or by one man. It's a job that needs to be done by all the vendors and the community, because it needs to create enough momentum. And it's such a large thing to implement that I can understand that no vendor has implemented it alone. Well, Gemstone went a long way into that, but it's not JEE. So that's a problem. Wake up. We have to admit JEE, Enterprise Java Beans, are going to be here for a long time. It's kind of the next COBOL for us. We have to live probably till the end of my work time, probably. And the idea is, we need to put Smalltalk into action in this JEE-centric world. Why do we need it? Because this is where the money is. This is where the really big money is. Huge projects to develop, enough budgets to play around with. And why should we waste this opportunity? So, what do we do? we want to make Smalltalk a first-class citizen in this world. It shouldn't be the alien that is difficult to argue why you should use it. It should just be usable, out of the box. So we have to find out what needs to be changed in Smalltalk. Certainly something is missing. And secondly, what needs to be added to integrate this system into JEE, because we cannot work around it. So, there's no question that Smalltalk at the language level is a great language. Absolutely no question about this. Java really sucks big time compared to Smalltalk. Well, I have a direct comparison for some time, and I used Java for many years before. So it has less syntax, it has less boilerplate code for your language level tasks. Everything is shorter, simpler to read, to manipulate. Java AEE is excellent at the architecture level. You have less frameworks to write yourself, and you have the less boilerplate code for architecture level tasks. Say transactional control, persistent control, whatever you want, name it. Everything that has to do with big systems is simpler in JEE. Now, some of you looked a bit suspicious. Do you think that AGB programming or Java JEE is awful to write, is difficult, complicated, you have to learn a lot of stuff? Well, you have to learn a lot of stuff. Do you really believe that? Well, I believed that before I read into JEE 6. And I said, whoa, what's this? Let's try it with the simplest possible example, Hello World. Hello World AGB style. It used to be a bit of writing, a bit of write-up in the past. Let's see how it looks today, because that's an interesting message. What does it look like today? Well, you need a bean. That means you need to have a Java class that returns Hello World as a service. That's the bit here between public class and the closing brackets. It's a string returning method, say hello, returns Hello World. Now, what does this make an enterprise Java bean? It's the two red things, the two annotations here, stateless and remote. This is meta information, like a pragma in VisualWorks, that tells the AGB server when you deploy it, and he reads everything you deploy to it, tells us, do a lot of meta programming and a lot of configuration for me. Create everything that you need to make this simple class a stateless session bean that is accessible from the outside as a remote bean. You don't have to know anything of what's going on there. It simply works. You just do it and the bean is deployed. Deploying means you just drop it in the auto-deploy directory of Glassfish, for instance. A second later, you see that it has seen it, has read it, has created everything it can go on. That's AGB style today. On the client side, it's even as simple. Well, it's still a lot of Java mambo-jumbo here with public static void main blah. Can never remember that bit. You have your print method, like the transcript show you would do in VisualWorks. And the only thing that you need to get a reference to this AGB on the server side. And you simply say, with this AGB annotation to the client application, find this bean and inject a reference to it in the local variable. That's all I have to do, and it works immediately. It's 2 minutes. This is not too complicated, isn't it? So, but what did we gain by using EGB instead of Hello World directly? We've got all this server stuff for free, instantly. We didn't need to care about it. We've got a scalable system, robust for thousands of users. We've got distributed server architecture. We've got a standard persistent system, JPA, Java Persistent Architecture, and a distributed transactional control system for free, completely built in. And believe me, it's controlled by annotation in the same simple style. We've got separation of client and remote business logic by components, a good thing. And finally, we've got a complete component lifecycle. You don't need to care about how your beans are created, destroyed, persisted, whatever. It's completely automatic. Everything for free. And all implemented by by a lot of vendors based on standard frameworks. So it's completely portable. It is really completely portable now. I like this. I've been working with Smalltalk for 25 years. But I like this stuff. It's still the Java language behind it. But the architecture stuff is great. So the question is, why don't Smalltalkers do this all the time or did invent this themselves? And, well, the answer is Java took its time to get to this point. AGB 1.0 specification was a disgrace for computing, believe me. And Ellen, are you here? Yeah, you can tell a bit of war stories maybe if you want later, for somebody interested. Well, we talked about how this specification was created years ago. It really was ugly, and it was a few kilometers of paper more to write to get to the same example. It really took time. I don't want to go through this time list here. It's 15 years of Java. It's 15 years of discovery, of trying new things, of learning, of destroying things that didn't work out. I just want to point out the 10th years. 2005, Java had 10 years, and it had 4.5 million developers worldwide. So, completely irregardless of how good or bad the language is, this is the most impressive run of a software technology all times, and will probably never be topped again. This is the most successful piece of software development. And it has all the money, and it's all the communities and all the projects. So, the interesting bit is, what did the Java community learn? So this is a slide I have to go through a few minutes. The first thing they learned is POJOs, plain old Java objects. They learned that it is a good thing to separate your business classes from the additional infrastructure information that you need to run it in a kind of an environment, like technical superclasses. It's like the data lens of VisualWorks, which has a specific superclass to use. So you all have all your business objects being located under the data object hierarchy for the lens. They learned that it is a bad thing to have framework-specific code in your business object because it makes it completely unportable. So they learned POJOs is an important thing to have. Business logic should not contain any information about the technical infrastructure it runs in. They learned that beans, that components, are a good thing. Beans are a component concept that's completely based on conventions. So you write it in a certain style, and the system discovers what it should mean. And it opens a complete market for tool vendors and framework vendors, because if you know how a component is structured from the outside, you can sell frameworks and tools for that, which we don't have in Smalltalk. They understood that dependency injection is a good thing, that you shouldn't do plumbing. Your business object shouldn't know how to create your database connection manually. Somebody else knows much better and has to inject into your component, completely inversion the control of building things. Inversion control was very important to have your business objects completely independent of the infrastructure. Annotations, metaprogramming. It's all about annotations either in your code or as XML files externally to get into separating the generation of your configuration from your programming. And finally, containers, the idea of having an instance that runs everything for you and you don't need to care about the lifetime. So a container is kind of an operating system for running enterprise beans. It's really the thing that creates it, that destroys it, that makes it able for you to find them. That's all you need to know about a container. So in AGB, this looks a bit like this here. You have the yellow ones are the containers on the server and the client side containing your business objects. They rely on a very large set of frameworks and base everything on the runtime environment. Don't want to go to this in all detail. Dependency injection annotation gives you pluggable components. Also resources or other infrastructure objects. It's declarative. So you don't need to program a bit. You just say, I want this component at this place. And here's an example for a simple